The young and the restless Spoilers. Lauren's eyes burned with indignation as she watched yet another scene unfold in the study, a scene that had become all too familiar. Victor, ever the enigmatic puppeteer, was once again handing Michael a series of complex, nearly unsolvable problems. The numbers and symbols danced across the paper like an inscrutable code, each equation more demanding than the last. For Michael, these were not mere puzzles, they were tests of loyalty, a means for Victor to assert control and demand unwavering devotion. Yet, to Lauren, it was an exploitation of power, a toxic manipulation that she could no longer stand. From the moment she first realized the true nature of their relationship, Lauren had harbored a deep resentment toward Victor. To her, he was nothing more than a cunning exploiter, a man who thrived on bending others to his will for his own gain. Michael, on the other hand, was ensnared by a blind, almost reverential admiration for Victor. His unwavering dedication, his willingness to submit to every challenge thrown his way, was a source of constant worry for Lauren. She feared that Michael was losing himself in a labyrinth of numbers and riddles, a labyrinth designed by Victor to keep him under his thumb. Lauren's thoughts raced as she pondered the implications of Michael's latest revelation. In a hushed tone filled with both shock and dismay, Michael had confessed that he was preparing to defeat Jack and Jabot on behalf of Victor. The revelation struck Lauren like a bolt of lightning. Jack and Jabot, with their impeccable track record of integrity and kindness, had always stood apart from the scheming web spun by Victor. Jack, in particular, was a man of honor, steadfast in his love for Diane and unburdened by the machinations that so often surrounded his adversaries. To Lauren, the notion of Victor pitting Michael against Jack was not just dangerous, it was a betrayal of everything that was right and just. She had watched, time and time again, as Victor's influence deepened his control over Michael. The endless stream of difficult problems was no academic exercise, it was a way to keep Michael tethered to a relationship that was slowly poisoning his mind and heart. Lauren knew that if Michael continued down this path, he would become nothing more than a pawn in Victor's grand design, a design that threatened to upend the balance of power within their world. Determined to act, Lauren resolved that she could no longer stand by and watch Michael be manipulated. In her eyes, the toxic grip that Victor held over him had to be broken. And what better way to do that than by aligning with someone who truly embodied the principles of decency and honor? Jack, with his unwavering commitment to his own goals and his sincere love for Diane, was the antithesis of Victor's manipulative nature. Jack never sought to harm anyone, his battles were fought with honor and a sense of justice. It was precisely this contrast that fueled Lauren's determination to see Victor defeated. In the hushed corridors of their sprawling estate, as twilight began to cast long shadows over the polished floors and mahogany walls, Lauren began to craft her plan. She would support Jack in his struggle against Victor, a struggle that promised to unmask the true nature of the man who had long used his power to subjugate those around him. But her plan did not end there. Lauren knew that to truly free Michael from the toxic grip of Victor, she would need to persuade him to question his blind allegiance. With unwavering resolve, she decided she would talk to Michael, confront him with the reality of Victor's exploitation, and help him see that his talents and passions were being used for someone else's twisted agenda. The days that followed were a whirlwind of secretive meetings and hushed conversations. In the quiet solitude of their private study, Lauren sought out Michael, her voice soft but resolute as she broached the subject of his loyalty. "Michael," she began, her tone imbued with both tenderness and urgency, "you have an extraordinary mind, a gift that deserves to be celebrated and nurtured, not squandered in the service of someone who exploits your talents for his own gain." Michael listened, his eyes clouded with a mix of confusion and conflict. He had long admired Victor, believing him to be a mentor who challenged him to be his best. But now, faced with Lauren's earnest words, the seeds of doubt began to take root. Meanwhile, across town, Jack moved with his customary calm determination. His personal life, anchored by his love for Diane, remained a source of strength for him, a stark contrast to the scheming undercurrents that threatened to disrupt the delicate balance of power in their midst. Jack had always maintained that his relationship with Diane was built on mutual respect and genuine affection. He had no interest in the destructive power plays that seemed to define Victor's world. The rumor that Victor might have even thought Jack harbored secret affections for Nikki was laughable to him. Jack's heart was clear, and his goals were firmly set on a future where love and integrity prevailed. For Lauren, the decision was clear: she would stand with Jack and oppose Victor at every turn. She began to reach out discreetly to trusted allies within their inner circle, piecing together a coalition that could challenge Victor's stranglehold. Her plan was as audacious as it was necessary. In a carefully arranged meeting, Lauren confronted Michael again, this time with a more direct proposition. "If you truly believe in protecting the integrity of our family," she said, her eyes locked onto his, "then you must reconsider the path you're on. Victor's plans, to use your genius against those who do no wrong, are not for the betterment of anyone. We must stand with those who honor loyalty and love, not with someone who thrives on exploitation." Michael's inner turmoil was palpable. He had always seen Victor as a guiding force, a mentor who pushed him to excel. But Lauren's words, laced with passion and conviction, began to erode the blind reverence he had long held. In the quiet hours of the night, as he pored over the same equations Victor had given him, Michael's thoughts turned to the possibility of a different future, one where his talents could be used to build rather than to destroy. The realization was both exhilarating and terrifying. Back at Victor's office, the air was thick with anticipation. Victor, confident in his manipulative prowess, was unaware of the seeds of rebellion that were beginning to sprout in the hearts of those he had long controlled. His latest scheme, to pit Michael against Jack and Jabot in a ruthless contest of intellect and power, was set to culminate in a clash that would determine the fate of more than just personal pride. It was a battle that would define allegiances and test the bonds of family and loyalty. As the day of reckoning approached, Lauren's efforts intensified. She reached out to Jack, detailing her growing concerns about Victor's exploitative methods and the dangerous path that Michael was on. Jack, ever the principled warrior for what was right, listened intently. "I have always respected Michael's talents," Jack said, his voice measured and resolute. "But if Victor is using those talents to wage war against the very values we hold dear, then we must intervene. Diane and I are prepared to stand against this tyranny. We will fight for a future where love and loyalty are the true measures of strength." With Jack's support, Lauren began to form a counter-strategy, a plan that would expose Victor's true nature and free Michael from his unwitting servitude. In secret meetings held in the quiet back rooms of trusted establishments, Lauren and Jack's allies reviewed every piece of evidence, every cryptic message that hinted at Victor's manipulations. Their resolve grew stronger with each passing day, fueled by the knowledge that the battle they were about to wage was not just for personal redemption, but for the soul of their entire family. The climax of this intricate dance of loyalty and betrayal came in a tense confrontation held in the early hours of a stormy night. Michael, torn between the legacy of his mentor and the desperate pleas of the woman who had always loved him unconditionally, found himself standing at a crossroads. Lauren's steady, determined gaze met his, and in that charged moment, he made a choice. "I see it now," Michael admitted softly, the weight of his decision palpable in the silence that followed. "I've been blinded by admiration, but I cannot continue down this path if it means sacrificing the very essence of who I am." With Michael's defection from Victor's camp, the balance of power began to shift. Lauren, emboldened by this breakthrough, urged Michael to help her expose Victor's deceptions. Together, they began to gather irrefutable evidence that would dismantle the foundation of fear and manipulation upon which Victor's empire was built. The final showdown was as inevitable as it was cathartic. With Jack and his allies at the helm, and Michael now fighting for the truth, Victor found himself isolated, his machinations laid bare before the very people he had sought to control. In a dramatic meeting that pitted loyalty against ambition, Jack confronted Victor with a quiet intensity. "You have used and manipulated those around you for far too long," Jack declared. "It's time to put an end to this charade. We stand for truth, honor, and the love that binds us, not for the twisted puzzles you force others to solve." As the confrontation reached its crescendo, Lauren's heart swelled with a mix of vindication and sorrow. She had risked everything to free her family from the toxic grasp of a man who saw only numbers and control, not the beauty of genuine connection. And in that moment of reckoning, as Victor's empire began to crumble under the weight of its own deceit, she knew that a new era was dawning, a future defined by loyalty, love, and the promise of redemption. Thus, the battle for the soul of the family was won not by brute force, but by the unwavering belief in what was right. Lauren's resolute stand against exploitation, Jack's honor and steadfastness, and Michael's brave turn toward the truth had forged an alliance that would reshape their destiny. The calculus of betrayal had been recalculated, and in the end, it was the human heart, with all its complexities and vulnerabilities, that emerged victorious. In the quiet hours of an autumn evening, the tension in the sprawling estate was palpable. A storm was brewing not only in the corridors of power but also within the hearts of those caught in its relentless grip. Michael sat alone in his private study, the soft hum of the city outside contrasting sharply with the storm of thoughts racing through his mind. On one side lay his career, a world defined by intellect, loyalty, and the powerful influence of Victor. On the other, his marriage and the love of his life, Lauren, who had grown increasingly desperate to free him from a web of manipulation and deceit. Lauren had come to Michael with an ultimatum, a plea laced with both determination and sorrow. She wanted him to use the mountain of evidence he had painstakingly collected over the years to put Victor behind bars. Victor, with all his charm and cunning, had committed countless crimes, each more insidious than the last, and it was time he paid for every act of exploitation and abuse of power. The evidence was damning, and Michael knew that it could bring down a man who had long used his influence to bend others to his will. Yet, the situation was far from straightforward. While Lauren's demand echoed with the call for justice, a deeper and more complex loyalty still tethered Michael to Victor. For years, Victor had been not just a mentor but also a figure of trust, a guiding force whose methods, though harsh and often morally ambiguous, had pushed Michael to achieve heights he had never imagined. Victor's vision of power was seductive, and his confidence in Michael had nurtured a bond that was difficult to sever. Ironically, Victor even harbored ambitions of his own, a dark desire to see Jack, a rival whose honor and integrity had long stood in opposition to Victor's own methods, face imprisonment, a fate he thought fit for a man who dared to defy him. But such a plan was nothing more than an empty threat. Deep down, Victor knew that sending Jack to prison was impossible. Not because of the lack of evidence, but because Michael's loyalty, however tenuous it had become, was still the very foundation of his trust in him. Caught between conflicting loyalties, Michael found himself at an impossible crossroads. On one hand, Lauren's passionate plea for justice stirred something inside him, a longing to do what was right, to break free from a cycle of manipulation that had long dictated his life. On the other hand, the weight of his career and the expectations of a man he had once revered loomed large. Victor's words, his unwavering confidence in Michael's abilities, had built an edifice of expectations that was not easily dismantled. The ultimatum was clear: obey Lauren's command, help Jack, and by extension, the forces of righteousness, bring Victor to justice, or remain loyal to a man who had both mentored him and shaped his destiny. Failure to choose could mean more than just a professional misstep, it could spell the end of his marriage. Lauren, with her fierce determination and unyielding sense of justice, made it known that she would leave if Michael did not sever the toxic ties that bound him to Victor. The prospect of losing her, of losing the one person who had stood by him through every trial, was a reality that Michael could no longer ignore. In the dim light of the study, Michael sifted through the evidence once more. Each file, each photograph, each signed document was a testament to Victor's transgressions. The evidence was overwhelming: financial fraud, abuse of power, and countless other offenses that had harmed not only individuals but the very integrity of their entire organization. And yet, as Michael stared at the neatly organized files, he could not shake the memories of the early days, the guidance, the support, the lessons that Victor had imparted. It was as if his heart was caught in an eternal tug-of-war, each side pulling him further from a path he once thought was inevitable. Lauren's face floated before his eyes, a face filled with both sorrow and unwavering resolve. He remembered the moment she had confronted him, her voice trembling with emotion as she said, "Michael, I need you to see what Victor has done. We have enough evidence to destroy him, to free ourselves from his grasp. I cannot stand by and watch you lose yourself any longer. I need you, not as his pawn, but as the man I fell in love with, a man of integrity, of courage." Those words echoed in his mind, resonating with a truth he could no longer dismiss. Yet, even as Michael leaned towards the promise of a new beginning, Victor's influence loomed in every corner of his consciousness. Victor's belief in him had always been a double-edged sword, pushing him to excel, yet chaining him to a legacy of unethical practices and ruthless ambition. The thought of betraying Victor was not one he entertained lightly. It was as if turning his back on his mentor would mean rewriting the very narrative of his existence. The stakes were now impossibly high. With Lauren's ultimatum hanging over him like a dark cloud, Michael knew that his decision would not only redefine his career but also reshape his identity. His future, a future built on love, honesty, and self-determination, depended on this singular, heart-wrenching choice. The night wore on, and as the silence of the study deepened, Michael reached a quiet resolve. He knew that if he were to salvage both his marriage and his own soul, he could no longer allow himself to be the pawn in Victor's dangerous game. The evidence was too damning, the crimes too numerous, and the cost to his own integrity too high. With a heavy heart, he realized that true loyalty did not mean blind obedience, it meant having the courage to stand up for what was right, even when it meant turning against those who once meant the world to him. The decision was made. Michael would help Jack, alongside Lauren, to expose Victor for the criminal mastermind he truly was. The task ahead was daunting. It meant dismantling a vast network of deceit and manipulation, risking not only his career but also the safety and stability of his future. Yet, Michael found solace in the knowledge that he was finally choosing the path of truth, the path that promised redemption and the chance to reclaim his identity from the shadows of the past. As dawn broke over the horizon, Michael stepped out of the study with a newfound determination. In that quiet moment, he resolved to gather every scrap of evidence he possessed and deliver it to those who could ensure justice was served. He would confront Victor, not as a loyal subordinate, but as a man who had seen the truth, and who was now prepared to fight for a future defined by honesty and love. Lauren, watching him from the doorway, saw in his eyes the spark of the man she had fallen in love with, the man who, despite the heavy burden of his past, was ready to embrace a future unshackled by the chains of manipulation. And while the road ahead promised peril and uncertainty, Michael's decision would not only alter the course of his own life but also serve as a clarion call for justice in a world too long dominated by deceit. In that moment, standing at the crossroads of love and duty, Michael understood that his choice was not merely about betraying a mentor. It was about reclaiming his identity, protecting the ones he loved, and ensuring that the truth, no matter how painful, would finally triumph over the tyranny of exploitation. The legacy of Victor, built on countless wrongs, would be exposed to the light of day, and in doing so, Michael hoped to find the redemption that had eluded him for so long.